How hard did you push it? Till I black out? Yes. Numerous times, yes.
What's happening, Municipals? This is your boy, Big C. No Ashton today, but we do have a returning special guest. My boy, Matty Brown, ex-mayor of Gerhardt, owner of Manzanita, also runs the pro shop out at Highlands and the golf course at Highlands out on the coast of Oregon. What's happening, buddy? It's been a minute since we've had you on.
Yeah, it's great to be with you, Big C. Lots of rain going on. Not much golf, but lots to talk about. That's for sure. Great Masters Sunday. Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about golf right now.
It's the depressing time for us in the Pacific Northwest because we can handle it through February, halfway through March is even handleable, but like the minute we don't get it to let up through the end of March getting into April, I mean, I think that's when the cloudiness and depression sets in for most of us.
Yeah, I agree. I remember last year it was really bad, and I thought, God, I can't handle another spring like this, and now it's worse this spring. But I was talking to somebody last year, and we had rain on like up until 4th of July. So if we can get some sun a little earlier down at the coast, we'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we did have a pretty long summer last year. We had good weather until the end of October into like middle of November. So that was nice. I mean, even if we do get the rain coming for a little bit longer, if Mother Nature can give us a long summer, that would be epic. But I'm not ever going to hold my breath with the Pacific Northwest.
You just never know.
Never know. Well, as a guy that is a PGA merchandiser of the year at one point, one thing I wanted to talk to you about, and it's a big topic in golf, who knows if all the, different bodies of golf are going to jump on this or how it's going to pan out by 2026. But I wanted to talk to you kind of about the ball rollback. I know you are on staff with Titleist, and Titleist had a very strong opinion about the ball rollback. I kind of want your opinion on how you think it's going to affect the pro game, but really I want to know how you think it might affect the actual retail space if it even goes that far.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, first, I am on staff with Titleist, and Titleist has been very outspoken about not rolling the ball back. And I I went to the Titleist Partners Conference in 2018, and we had a big presentation about not rolling the ball back. We went to visit the ball plants. We did looked at all the R&D and all the technology, and Titleist is definitely the best ball in golf. It's just a great the way that they do things is just amazing. Their staff is amazing. But I do think that my opinion of this might be not real popular with Titleist, so I hope this doesn't get out. But I honestly have always thought this way. But I do believe that top tier professional golf should have a different set of rules than the amateur player, and I liken it a lot to baseball. And to be honest, if it was up to me, I'd say PGA guys got to use persimmon woods and old Bellata balls. I mean, that's how old school I would probably go. Everyone has to have blades. Because I mean, there is a romanticism to golf like there is with baseball, with the wooden bats and everything. I mean, can you imagine if, Major League Baseball had aluminum bats and they were just dinging home runs all over the place? It'd be kind of like the steroid era over again, where it kind of loses something. Um, but I do feel that most professional sports have different rules than their amateur counterparts, right? So basketball has a different size court, different 3-point line. Same with high
Different size
school,
basketball.
different, yeah. Depending, yeah, exactly. I mean, I do understand the argument of you know, one set of rules, which golf has had. But even that's changed a little bit, right? I mean, there was the weird wedge rule for a while where certain players could play a wedge with different grooves than other players, and they kind of grandfather that in. Um, so there already is kind of a what do you call it? Bifurcation of the rules. So if it was up to me, I would say let's take it all the way back. Let's go persimmon. Let's make it fun because the best players are still going to be the best players, right? As far as PGA professionals, like on my level, um, I don't know if they would say, okay, well, even the local head pros and PGA tournaments and stuff have to roll the ball back. I mean, I got no problem with that. Everyone's playing the same ball, and I don't hit the ball very far compared to a lot of my, a lot of the guys in our section. We've got some great young guns now in our section that really do hit the ball well. But I mean, we're all going to be playing the same ball, so I don't have any problem with that at all. I can understand why manufacturers are probably like, hey, let's not roll the ball back, just like they don't want the drivers rolled back or anything else, because there's definitely opportunity to sell balls, and they would fear that change of, oh gosh, what's going to happen. But I don't see it being a big problem. Like these type of things tend to feel really scary until they happen, and then you're like, oh, remember that wedge thing that happened a few years ago? Like that didn't do anything. Um, I, I kind of feel the same way here, but something has to be done, and something I agree with Tiger and Jack that it should have been done a while ago. Um, and it's not even so much like golf courses being out of date, which I think is a problem. Um, but it's just the trajectory is just continuing to get higher and higher, and I yeah, like I said, I'd go back to persimmon.
Yeah, my big thing, and I hate the argument that they're more athletic and they're stronger and there's things going on there. Yeah, that's also true in baseball. Those guys are stronger, they're more athletic, they go about the kinetics of their body differently than they did when Babe Ruth played. I mean, Babe Ruth would smoke 10 packs, of cigarettes a week and drink 20 beers and go out and hit some dingers. Like that was the game back then. But with the equipment on top of them being more athletic, it's just getting to a point where it's creating an issue where us as architect nerds and guys that really love to see some of these, courses that were built in the 1800s that don't have Augusta fuck you money where they can like buy $3 million worth of property to put one tee box. Like we're eliminating so many incredible courses that can be played in the rotation for opens and for all of these championships. And I think that's the sad part with how far the ball is going and how far these guys can hit it. And when they, pros in baseball, it's an easy example to kind of talk about because pros in baseball use wooden bats. We all know that. But that doesn't slow down the sales for all of those kids that play Little League and play in college that use these $400, $600 aluminum bats. Like, those companies are making absolute fistfuls of cash, and they're figuring out ways to advertise to these kids to get their equipment in their hands. And they're spending this money like it's no other. And I think it would be the same way with amateur golf. I'm not going to
Absolutely.
go out and buy a professional ball that's harder for me to hit when I'm an 8 handicap. I'm going to continue to play my AVX Titleist and and my big head, and those things don't need to change for the amateur side.
Absolutely. And let's see how this might play out too. There's a competition ball. Let's say it's Titleist make the competition ball, and it's just doesn't go as far. Well, that's not. I don't think that's gonna um, make the normal Pro V1 sell less, right? People are still gonna buy the Pro V1 or the AVX or the Pro V1X, right? Those premium balls that go the farthest, have the best spin characteristics, right? The AVX is a lower spin ball, which is great off the driver. It's great in this type of weather where it's a little lower compression, right? So you're going to compress, it's easier to compress. So that's a great ball. And then the Pro V1 is kind of in between. Pro V1X is a little firmer, higher trajectory. Regular players aren't going to stop buying those, but there might be an opportunity because you got those some players that are like, oh, you know what, I'm going to try the Pro Ball too. So you might buy a couple dozen just for fun. So I don't see it really like affecting sales dramatically. Same with clubs. Like let's say they did roll back clubs too. I don't know if you saw that interview with Billy Horschel, but he was talking about they were talking about the rollback, and it sounded like he was in favor of a rollback with the ball, but he was like talking about equipment, and he was saying how like on his Titleist driver, the T mark is right in the sweet spot every time. Like he's very precise. He hits a sweet spot. But he was saying that he went down the line and looked at other people's driver T marks, and they were all over the face, meaning that they are not hitting the ball in the sweet spot very consistently, right? So that really made me think about the persimmon again, and I was like, because I love playing with. I'll go out and play with persimmon quite a bit, especially when I'm playing the Highlands or Manzanita, some of the shorter courses, or I'll take it out to Astoria or Gearhart, and you got to be precise on that thing. But when you hit it in the screws, it actually goes pretty far. And so that's kind of what he was saying. It's like, I've got this 460 driver, I'm hitting it in the screws every time, but these other guys aren't, and their distance is about the same, right? So what would happen if we went to it could still be a metal wood, but what would happen if we went to back to a 300cc driver or something like that? So, like you were saying, to me, the baseball is probably the best analogy of it, right? It's just like, let them play with equipment that's meant for that level, and then let everyone else play with whatever they want. I don't care if they lift a couple limits on stuff for amateur players, depending on what's going to make it more fun for them. Yeah.
And you're always going to get those aspirational guys that want to play in mid-ams or want to play in US AMs to qualify for US Opens and stuff. And those guys are going to buy the equipment that they need to practice and play with, to play through those to get into the US Open, knowing that they're probably going to need to play the pro ball, and they're going to play a smaller head if they go that route and things like that. So you're going to get guys that are going to buy that equipment and that are going to use it because they want to, perform and play in those level of tournaments. So there's going to be that differentiation between guys that are trying to play at that level and guys that are just weekend warrior golfers, or guys like me that play 50 rounds a year that aren't really playing in professional tournaments or playing in any sanctioned tournaments. And there's room for all of it. And I think, like you were saying, if Tiger, one of the quotes he had during the Masters was he took out his persimmon to his country club back home, and he was hitting it 290 with his persimmon. And
Totally.
That's because he's like Billy Horschel. Him missing the sweet spot is like a millimeter inside or out. Like it's so minuscule, it's ridiculous. But you've got these big swingers nowadays where they've grown up with these equipment. A lot of the 22 to like 26-year-old guys on tour that never ever saw a small head like we did when we were growing up. I mean, I remember my first Dunlop spoon driver, and that thing was steel shafted, and the head was the size of most people's 7-woods now. Like
That's
it,
awesome.
It was tiny, and that's what I learned how to play golf with. And so, you know, these guys on tour, these kids that are coming up through, they're the ones that are more worried about it because, like Billy said, they're hitting it all over the face. You shrink that head up, those guys are nowhere near going to make a tournament. They're going to have so many issues there. And if you put them in blades, take them out of the more forgiving heads for their irons as well, you're going to have a lot harder guys to play. And that's why guys like Adam Scott and a lot of the guys have been on tour that grew up playing blades still play blades, because you find the center of the face, they're going to do pretty much the same thing as a cavity back.
You know, it was interesting because a few years ago, you know, when the USGA started changing some rules, right? So they changed the pin has to be in, or pin can be in, and then they changed the drop rule as well. And they've changed a few other weird things too. Like you can't go play golf by yourself and record your score, which is kind of weird. Because I love playing golf by myself, but if I can't record the score. But I was thinking back then that at that time that the PGA itself should come out with its own set of rules for professional golf and get rid of some of those weird rules. I think the drop rule is pretty dumb, dropping under your knees or whatever it is, because I remember growing up with, you had to drop it behind you, watching old tournaments driving behind you, which I thought was cool. like that scene in Caddyshack. And then of course I grew up dropping it from the shoulder width. I think going from the height of the shoulders, where you have the option of dropping from the height of your shoulders to your knees, to the top of your knees, I think is a better drop rule than below your knees. And then the pin thing has really become, in my opinion, weird when you're playing with a certain group, because you have some people that like it out and some people that don't. It actually creates more time now, because it's like, well, how do you want it? So it's like you kind of have to decide at the beginning, do we keep it in all the time or do we take it out? And then some person doesn't want to do that. So that's been awkward. So I'm okay with kind of relooking at some of these rules a little bit, who administers what. I kind of thought maybe the PGA would just come out with their own set, and then that would be the professional game, and then the USGA can be the amateur part of it. So that would be an option too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny. Stats have come out that you make more putts if the flag is pulled. It's just there's a million different stats out there that tell you that your ball is going to end up in the hole more often with the flag not in. That's why people used to tend wedge shots, because it could ricochet right off that guy, where if it goes in the cup and bounces out, you're more likely to just land an inch from the cup. So,
because you got to hit the very center of the pin for it to go in, right? I mean, that's the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think it became more prevalent in COVID because we couldn't pull pins. And so I think people got lazy too. I think it was just they got used to it and they were just like, there's no need to do it. I'm just gonna put it into the flag and call it.
And I find myself doing that too, and I don't even like having it in. But if I'm out with my boys and we're just having beers, it's like, oh yeah, let's keep it in.
Yeah, and I mean, there's times for that, but like if I'm playing a real match and I'm playing with a guy that doesn't like it pulled, I'm like, so I got to hit my putt. He's got to stand there and tend it, then put it back and hit his putt. It's tedious. And, little rules like that, it's like, why did we even need to change this? Like, why? Just keep it always out. And if amateur golfers want to keep it in when they're playing with their buddies, nobody's looking at you. Nobody cares. Like, keep it in. But if you're playing in a tournament, make it equal so everybody's got to do the same thing. Like, pull it out, call it a day. It's the same thing we're talking about with the ball rollback and things like that. It's just like the PGA should set their own rules. If you make it to the professional level, you like it or you don't, you should have to play by those rules. I mean, you don't ever hear a baseball player complaining about having to switch from metal to a wood bat. You don't hear quarterbacks in the NFL talking about how the ball is so much bigger in the NFL from college. Like, we know it's bigger, but not one quarterback ever says that they have a harder time utilizing the equipment because it changes from one level to the next. It's like that in almost every sport. I would say one of the only sports that's you don't see that is going to be a sport like hockey and tennis, where it's the same court, same style. I mean, court changes in tennis, but same everything in those two sports, and it doesn't really change one to the next. But every other professional sport in America, including basketball, different regulations when you get into the professional level because they make it harder. You have a smaller ball, it's easier to put in the hole in NCAA for basketball. They make the ball bigger because it's harder to put in the basket if the ball is a larger diameter. So,
well, and I wonder, how much of this is really some, people really wanting to hold on to the power as well, right? Because the USGA is a very powerful organization. They've got powerful people in there. The RNA is the same. Nothing against them, but they've been the guardians of the rules for a long time. But even those rules were different. Remember, I was just watching an old Shell's Wonderful World of Golf the other day, which are the best thing to watch on YouTube. And I was watching, it was George Knudson versus, I can't remember who he was playing, but they were playing, I think, somewhere in South America. And at the beginning of the match, the rules official was like, which ball do you want to play, the bigger ball or the smaller ball? So they had that RNA smaller ball for a while, and they all wanted to play the small ball. I think Sam Snead played in it too, but yeah, I think it was Sam Snead. So, but they elected to play the smaller ball. So there's always been kind of different rules and stuff. But I think there's a place for all those organizations. PGA can have their rules, the USGA can have theirs, the RNA can have theirs. They can, they can protect the amateur game. There's got to be some kind of compromise out there. But change is difficult, right? Especially for golf.
And they are professionals and they will adapt. So if they got to play it, don't play in the Open. Don't play in the U.S. Open if you don't like it, and if you do, buy yourself a dozen of the balls and figure it out. That's just going to be what it comes down to.
Good players can adapt to anything. That's such a good point. I mean, they could go out and play with a senior flex set and learn how to make that ball curve. They can do that.
My favorite quote from when I was a kid, my dad used to always say, if you gave Tiger Woods a target set of golf clubs, he'd still beat every single amateur above a scratch. And it's like, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Because he'd figure out the tempo within a hole or two and be totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at old videos of Bobby Jones and those guys too, with the hickory shafts, each shaft was different. They had to learn how to hit the tempo on each one of those clubs, which was different, right? But they did it.
Yeah. And I mean, look at the success of a lot of those guys from the early 1900s, through the 70s and 80s. I mean, you didn't have the different flexes and different head styles and everything until we got into the 80s and 90s, and those guys adapted, figured it out, and made it work. And you had guys that stood out just like you do now, and the best players will froth to the top. It's not going to slow anybody down if they have to change or play different equipment. The best players will figure it out and will be able to adapt. So, all right,
Agreed.
let's get into, so we were talking a little bit before we started recording the episode. We just had Tron on, and, you're good buddies with Tron and the No Laying Up guys as well. And so he told a kind of a crazy story about him doing psychedelics out at Fossil Trace in Colorado, and it was probably one of the funniest stories we've had told on the pod. So this is kind of a new thing that I'm going to start asking a lot of our guests coming on. But and it could be anything. It doesn't have to be you doing drugs on the golf course or anything like that. But we'll leave that to Tron. But craziest story, and this could be something that happened at Highlands or Manzanita while you were running the shop or anything like that, or it could just be something that you experienced on the golf course.
Yeah, God, that's a tough one. I'm on the spot here. Well, I mean, I've definitely had a lot of fun experiences with drinking on the golf course. That's always been fun. I would say some of my funnest experiences were probably night golfing. And that might not be like playing a full round, but it might just be like grabbing a couple clubs and just hitting some shots. Off the top of my head, I remember a night in Portland when I was living up there, and we were at the Dublin pub. Have you been there? Yeah. So that used to be our place for a while, and Buddy and I had about 1,000 Guinnesses there, and it was probably 1 or 2 in the morning, and I was driving back to my place, which you drive past Portland Golf Club, and there's this one par three there. What holes that par three? Like, is that 4 or 5?
Right on the road.
Yeah, right on the road.
Yeah. I think it's 4 or 5. One of the two.
Well, my buddy and I were big Golf in the Kingdom fans, and I happened to have my old wooden Ping laminated wood 5-wood, which I still play with, in my trunk. And so we thought we'd go out and hit the bathing spoon on that hole, which I think from the tips, I don't remember how far it is from the tips, but we were just trying to hit 5-woods. I mean, we must have been out there for like 2 hours hitting 5-woods, and it was really the moon was like really light that night, so you could see pretty well. And so we were hitting shot after shot, and then we saw somebody like drive into the parking lot, and we like kind of, I think, hid in the bushes for a while, and then went out, and yeah, some guy was looking for us, so we kind of had to sneak out of there pretty fast. But that was fun. I used to do that kind of thing all the time. Not like crazy like that, but just kind of going out at night and hitting some shots. We did this one time at Bandon too. It was me and Grant Rogers, and John Grothy was the director of golf at the time, and the three of us went out on hole number 1 at Bandon. This was probably like at about 11:30 at night, and I can't remember. We all hit good shots on one, and then we hit our second shots, and then I couldn't find my golf bag. I was like, where did my golf bag go? And it was like gone. And so I found it the next morning. It was just like it was so dark that I lost it and found it the next morning. So we joke around about that all the time at Bandon when I go down there. But yeah, I mean, night golf, man, it's fun.
Night golf's a good time. I've done that out at Wildwood. Ryan does night golf out there occasionally, and I've done night golf out at Coos as well. Andre hosts a night golf event out there.
I haven't played there yet.
Yeah, Coos is fun. Next time you go down to Bandon, pop in there and and play Coos. I mean, Andre and Paulo have done a great job with that course.
Oh, cool. I'd love to go check it out. I played that 12-hole course.
Sunset?
Sunset was awesome.
I still need to get out there. I've heard nothing but good things out there. And that's on my bucket list next time I go down to Bandon is I have to make a detour to Sunset.
It's a trip, man. The whole experience is pretty awesome. When I got done, I texted the Sugarloaf guys. I was like, "Hey, I know you haven't played here yet, but just put it on your hidden gems list. Trust me, it's worth it."
I think it's on there too. We had him on the pod a couple months ago, and I was asking him a little bit about that, and he was saying Sunset was one that really stuck with him, and I told him next time he comes out here, I want to take him out to Laurelwood down in Eugene. Dan Hickson just literally got on a bulldozer one day and just redid all the greens, and it's supposed to be really, really fun 9-hole course to play now.
Oh, I'd love to get down there and play that. Oregon's got so many cool 9-hole courses.
There really is. I talk about Killarney West in Portland all the time. It's a trip when you drive out there because it's kind of in its own, land and world out there. And, very particular type of people, but it's one of the weirdest and quirkiest courses like anybody could ever play.
It's super fun. I love that place.
Yeah. Killarney is great. I mean, that's the thing. Most people need to expand their horizons and play more 9-hole courses because I think you're missing out on a lot of great golf and, places that you might not necessarily, experience. And one thing, I mean, I think the landscape of Highlands is one of the most unique places I've ever played. It's kind of wedged into this tight piece of property, but it creates such unique holes in very, different ways of playing golf. And I really love that about Highlands. And then what you were telling us last time you were on with Manzanita, you hearing about the square greens on the East Coast, and you were like, screw it, let's do it out here in Manzanita. Let's bring the square greens to the West Coast.
They're coming someday.
How's the home course going?
Good. Gin Creek.
Yeah. I saw some pictures you posted about it, and it's looking pretty good. Did you just have your Gin Creek tournament out there?
We just had kind of a little spring unveiling, just a few guys over to test it out. But then we punched the green yesterday. So we usually kind of punch it after we punch the Highlands or Manzanita. We'll just do a quick punch in the spring. So we did do a quick punch, but it's pretty cool. We've got 3 holes on the green, and then we've got 3 little tee boxes, so you can play kind of 9 holes. The longest hole's 30 yards, I think, 20 yards, 25 yards. But it's really fun, and the greens. It's a real green. It rolls probably at like a 9. So it's in pretty good shape. Obviously we've had kind of cold weather this year, so the punch will be good. We'll kind of, as soon as it warms up, it'll come back pretty quick. And then we want to do a little member guest tournament sometime, maybe in the summer. But yeah, it's fun. It's fun messing around with Gin Creek. We got to come out with some logo swag for Gin Creek. People have been asking about it on Instagram.
There's endless possibilities with that. I mean, you could have a gin bottle, starting where the creek starts and kind of coming through as a logo. There's some fun things you can play with that. And I mean, with the guys that did the Highlands Manzanita logo, I'm sure they could come up with something pretty badass.
Yeah, and we were going to come out with some specific member guest swag too, so stay tuned for that for sure.
I'll keep a lookout, and I definitely, when you do that, I would love to come out. And if anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, Gin Creek is actually a little course that Matty actually built at his house out on the coast. So it's, he has the guys from the course come over and help maintain it, and he's got, it's a great little setup. I mean, follow him on Instagram. You'll be able to take a peek of it, because it's pretty badass. It's aspirational for any of us golf fanatics.
It's such a pain in the ass too, because most people have the artificial turf, which I would recommend 1,000%. But I probably spend so much money on fertilizer for this thing and aeration and everything else. And we built a sod wall bunker, which was pretty cool. It was my first sod wall bunker I've ever built. But it's kind of morphed into more of a non-sod wall bunker now. So
I'm sure the maintenance on a sod wall is like way more extensive.
Yeah, and the way we built it, I think we actually built it pretty authentically, but it did get a lot of rain, and it kind of the sides kind of melted together, so we just kind of flashed it up. But we might redo it. We might make it actually a little steeper. We made it pretty, more of like a 45-degree angle, because it's not a huge bunker. But I might make it really crazy.
Well, from 20 to 30 yards, if anybody gets themselves into the bunker, that's on them. Because
yeah,
if you're not hitting greens from that distance, I think you have more issues with your game than you need.
Yeah, you'd be surprised though. I hit in there all the time. No.
Well, you being a golf course guy, architect guy like myself and like Ashton, are there any new courses or any trips that you're doing this year that you're really excited to kind of play or check out?
So we've talked a little bit about going back to Sand Valley. And me and some buddies went there in 2017, when it was just the one core Crenshaw course. And then David Kidd was there on property when we were there, and he took us on a preview of, I think, 14 holes of Mammoth Dunes as well. So we got to play 14 holes while it was still growing in, and that was really cool. And so we'd really like to get back there. So we've talked about maybe going back there this fall and maybe doing, I think Lido course might be open by then as well. And then we also have a buddy that did some work on the Doak course that they're building there too, which is going to be like a par 68 or something, par 69. So we have talked about going back there, and I'd really like to. That Lido course looks amazing, and obviously the whole facility is awesome. It's so much like Bandon. The courses are great, and just the vibe there is awesome. Hangout vibe's great. The food's cool. So I'd love to go back there, and I'd love to maybe take a tour of where the Doak course is going to be and stuff, and see what work they've done there, and then play Lido.
The story behind Lido is probably one of the coolest things that's happened in golf in a long time, and kind of how they went about designing it, basically hiring a guy that re-engineered and designed the course for PGA 2K, the video game, and then they basically hit them up to give them the plans via the LiDAR for the video game, which is just nuts. And then I think it's one of the first courses ever to be built by GPS, like dozers and stuff.
I didn't even know that. That's so cool.
So basically they had it all mapped out, and they basically had GPS dozers that like shaped the course via the LiDAR mapping that they got through the video game. And then it's Doak that designed it. Am I correct? that designed Lido, or was it Gil? I'm
It
pretty
might
sure it
be
was Tom
Lance.
Doak.
Well, I think Doak's doing the shorter course, but I don't know if he did the Lido.
One of those guys.
I don't know.
I don't know why, but I'm thinking Doak was the one, because I could have sworn that I heard him talk about it Yoke with Doak on the fried egg. He was talking about the Lido. But anyways, basically he went out there and then accentuated some things. So that, you know, they built it, and then he went out there and he goes, I actually think in the original Lido this was way more aggressive. So he was adding like an extra 4 or 5 feet to some of these greens to make them like high pedestal, like mesa style greens that you're basically hitting 40-yard tee shots 40 to 50 feet in the air. And he just basically accentuated some of the stuff that he thought was more, you know, relevant to what the Lido actually was. But the majority of the course was designed by a LiDAR video game system and GPS backos, which I think is just like...
That's mind-blowing, right? But that would be the way to make it as close to the old one as possible.
Yeah. And the guy that designed it, I mean, the amount of extensive research that he put into it to, you know, with old photos and some maps that he was able to get, and then actually visiting the original, you know, landscape, even though it's not exactly, you know, there's still a Lido golf course out there, but it's not the same as what it originally was. But he even went out there to kind of see what some of the water holes would kind of be shaped around so that they could bring that into the design as well. And it's really cool. I mean, for a course that's basically redesigned from the coastal side of Long Island and bringing it into Nebraska is just like absurd and unheard of, and would only happen in 2022.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they just found this, you know, property that had so much sand, and it's like a, you know, an empty canvas. And I mean, all the water that they, you know, because they had to man make most of the water stuff too, I would guess, right?
Yeah. I mean, everything was man-made and recreated to be able to create the water carries and all of those things that were what made the Lido, you know, the Lido. So I'm jealous of you, getting out there and, you know, hopefully getting to play it, because it's definitely on my bucket list to get out and play it. I did hear that they were thinking of making it the only private course out at Sand Valley, but I doubt that'll hinder you being able to get out there.
Yeah, and I did hear that, and it might be that one, or it might be the other Doak one, something about possibly being private. But I haven't talked to those guys for a while, but I'd love to get out there this year. I don't know if I'll be able to, but within the next couple of years for sure. I'd like to go back there and, you know, maybe play some other courses there too. I haven't played Sand Hills. I have some friends that go and play there a couple times, you know, every couple of years, and they love it. I mean, they say Sand Hills is like the best golf experience they've ever been on. Like the whole trip and everything is amazing. So that's on my bucket list for sure.
Yeah, I think my thing this year is I need to finally get up to oh man, why am I blanking on it? Dave McClay Kids course that he built up in Washington.
Oh, Gamble Sands. I haven't played there either.
I haven't played Gamble Sands, and I really want to see the new course that he's building as well, and also check out the quicksand. I mean, just the pictures alone are ridiculously spectacular, and it being a very, you know, I guess short drive for us West Coasters, which is like 4 or 5 hours, but you know, being a short drive and being such kind of another mecca of David McClay Kidd, you know, golden design, I definitely want to get out there. I think His second course is reported, I think it should be done by the fall of this year, if not beginning of next year.
Yeah, that's cool. I have a good friend who's a golf course photographer, and he plays all over the place, and it's his favorite golf course. He's played a lot of good ones, and yeah, I hear it's just so much fun. David Kidd, when we got to talk to him at Sand Valley a few years back, he talked a lot about some of the lessons he's learned from going through different stages of being a golf course designer, and how Bandon came about, and then he kind of did some other projects that weren't like super favorably reviewed, like Tetherow and the Castle course, and some others. And he kind of acknowledged like, hey, my favorite style is really open fairways and more friendly golf with lots of different angles and stuff. And so I really enjoyed the holes that we played at Mammoth Dunes because they were just really, really fun. And that's what I hear about Gamble Sands too. There's just so many options and run up shots and wide fairways. And for golfers of all ability levels, it's a challenge, but it's also a lot of fun with a lot of opportunity. And that's kind of been his hallmark now of design is that type of golf course, which is pretty cool. A lot of people, when they get criticized about something, kind of double down or whatever. And he's like, hey, I acknowledge, like, I'm still learning this, and my tastes are going to evolve over time. And that's what kind of led to Gamble Sands. So yeah, I'm super excited to play there and then see the new course. What's the new course going to be called?
That I don't know. I definitely would have to look that guy up, but all I know is you got OG Gamble Sands, and then you've got Quicksand, which is the challenge course that he built. But yeah, I think one of the coolest quotes from David McClay Kidd is he likes to design a course that old ladies can play it on the ground and professionals can play it high and long. And I think that's a true architect. When you can build a course that a 75-year-old lady can go and whack it around 120 yards and get 40 yards of rollout, and you've got guys that can hit it 300 and have the same amount of fun as one as the other. And I think that's the best thing you can ask for in a golf architect. And there's some other architects out there that design for the heavy challenge, and that's great, and I'm glad we have those type of courses, but we don't need a bunch of Reese Joneses.
Right.
We don't need all of those type of courses. But when we've got McClay Kidd and Gilp, I think he's in that same boat where his design at Rustic Canyon is one of the coolest designs you can play too, because it's a playable course for all abilities. And I think that's one of the best signs you can have.
Well, and I think so many of these guys are such historians too, and they take so much inspiration from St. Andrews and the Old Course. And the Old Course is so much fun to play for everybody. I mean, it doesn't matter what the weather's like. I mean, you can hit putter off almost every tee box if you wanted to. You could play the hole with your putter. You could play it with anything you want, and it's fun. And exactly like you were saying, it's it's wide open. There's a lot of angles, and it just makes it fun. And the contours on the ground, you can play a lot of the contours on the ground. And what I think is cool about modern architecture right now is a lot of these guys have just gone back to old school principles. Golf's not that complicated, right? Why do we got to make it so complicated?
Why do we got to have fountains on every hole? And
oh God, there's a guy. There's a guy. He's a good guy, but when we took over Manzanita, he just kept. And I thought he was kidding at first, but he kept saying, "Hey, when are we gonna get the pond? When are we gonna get the fountain in the pond on number 9?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I don't think it's that kind of course. We're trying to embrace the Linksy style." But every time I see him, he jokes around with me. He's like, "Hey, that pond. Where's the fountain? Why is there no fountain in the pond?"
Because you're not Tom Fazio. That that should be your answer. You're just like,
Because we're not in Palm Springs.
yeah, yeah. And in the course isn't. I mean, you have houses on the course, but it's not a track home course.
Correct.
You know, we don't need to have water features so people can have high sale values for their homes.
Well, I was like, we're trying for this kind of Pine Valley-ish linksy vibe, kind of natural Pinehurst, Pine Valley type vibe, and we say that to somebody, and they say, "Well, Pine Valley, where's that? Where's Pinehurst? What are you talking about? What are those courses?" I'm like, well, they're pretty cool. We're going for that look. I'll show you some pictures.
Yeah, do a quick Google search, and then you'll kind of understand where we're headed here.
Totally.
Oh man. Well, speaking of Manzanita and Highlands, what changes are you guys planning on doing this year, if any, or any big plans, tournaments, anything that you guys are going to be hosting this year?
Well, Manzanita, we've got the big Manzanita Open, which is every May. I think this year it's the 19th, 20th, and 21st. Huge charity tournament that we've had at Manzanita for a long time, actually.
Still open to register?
I think there are still spots open. Just
All right,
Google
I might have to
Manzanita
jump on
Open.
that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a 4-person scramble, and it's a 9-hole scramble. You can play either of the 3 days, and it's just a ton of fun. Like, people donate beer, and there's hot dogs and hamburger barbecue on the first hole, and everyone's having fun, and they raise a ton of money for local charities. And so it's really become just a fun deal every year. And we couldn't do it 2020 because of the pandemic, and then there was kind of a smaller version in 2021, and then finally we kind of got back to the big version last year, and then this year, with all the restrictions lifted and stuff, now we can finally do the full deal back again. So it's going to be super fun. But yeah, we've been just doing a lot of kind of upgrades this winter, projects, a lot of drainage projects, not real sexy projects, but with all the rain that we've gotten the last 2 years, like Manzanita, for instance, there was just some areas like around greens and stuff that have just been saturated over the years that, we built some dry wells and French drains and stuff. And, a lot of the work that we've done over the last 5 years is kind of a lot of deferred maintenance from, previous years, and just projects that over time will just improve conditions. So, we did a ton of drainage work like in the fall. Now we're installing some new automated pumps for fairways, and for the second straight year, we've reseeded, or we've overseeded all the fairways with fescue, and we're using the same dunes mix that they use at Bandon. So there's a company that basically kind of makes that specific fescue mix that they use at Bandon. So we've just been trying to overseed fairways and tees with that, just to kind of make things a little more drought proof, so that it can play a little faster and crispier in the summertime, especially. And as that grass is really fun to play off of, for ground shots and stuff. So we're kind of working on some of that type of stuff. Highlands, we experimented with we squared off a few greens there just for fun. So we might continue trying to do a few mowing patterns with that stuff. Manzanita, there are some we squared off a bunch of fairways. And we'll probably do some greens eventually, but we've kind of been on a little new chemistry program there this winter. So we've been kind of working on that, and then we're going to punch the greens this weekend. So the chemistry program we've been using is really good. It's real similar to the one they use at Gearhart and at the Highlands. So we're super excited about that. Few little extra tee boxes that we've kind of created as well at both courses, little secret tee boxes. Got a couple fun ideas with that. But yeah, mostly just, trying to make those kind of minor improvements that, over the years just kind of add up and add up. And, at Highlands, we've been doing it for 15 years. Manzanita, we're still, we're still barely getting started. We've only been there this will be our fifth season. So yeah, we're super excited about it.
Every year I've gone out there, it's gotten better and better. And I applaud you guys on the changes and things that you make, because for a 9-holer, that's both of them being 9-holers that are extremely affordable, and offer the type of golf that you guys are doing. I think it's awesome. And like we were talking about, more people need to seek out 9-hole courses, because if you find a 9-hole course around you that has a Matty Brown that puts the effort into these courses, it's going to be somewhere that you're going to want to go to again and again, because they play just as good as any 18-hole course. You get finished in an hour, you have a couple beers, you grab a hot dog, and you get back out there and play another 9. I mean, that's the coolest part about it, is you're not tied in for 4.5, 5 hours. You can get out there an hour and a half, loop the 9, hang out with your buddies, have a few beers on the, in front of the clubhouse, and then jump back out there and loop it again. And I think that's one of the coolest things, and one reason that I fell in love with a course that I grew up around, which is Northwood. And if anybody hasn't played Northwood because the 9-hole course, they're absolutely idiots, because it's one of the most untouched gems from Alistair McKenzie, and it's short, fun, enjoyable, and the people, just like your staff out at both your courses, are just one of a kind, and they're just incredible people to run across. And I think those salt of the earth kind of people are what we need more of in golf.
Well, thanks for all the kind words. We really love doing what we do, and we appreciate the positive support and everything. Because it's not always easy. You're working hard, and a lot of times, your staff is understaffed, and especially the last couple of years with the big golf boom and everything. But hearing stuff like that, we really appreciate it, and hearing about these other 9-hole courses where you can play in under 2 hours. You can bring out your persimmons if you want, because maybe it's a shorter course, so you don't really need your big dog. It's just a really fun type of golf, and I hope more people realize that it's out there, especially in Oregon and California. Some of the best 9-hole courses in the world. We need to write a book about West Coast 9-holers. It's just really cool, and we all kind of grew up on those type of courses. So did I, and it makes me love 9-holers and hidden gems even more.
Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about before we got on, I mean, Sunset down in Coos, or near Coos, in between Coos and Bandon. I mean, not a 9-holer, but a 12-holer, and it's something that's absolutely unique all on its own. And you growing up on 9-holer, I grew up on a 9-holer, Prune Ridge in the Bay Area, and it's what I love, and I actually seek out solid 9-hole courses, and they're everywhere. In the Portland area, I think we've got about 3 or 4 out here that I really love, and Eugene's got a couple. Salem's got a couple really good ones down by me as well, and I just think they need to be given a little bit more love for what they are, and it should be an entryway for a lot of people to get into golf too. I mean, 9-hole course is a much friendlier way to kind of learn the game and get yourself wet when it comes to it. It's not as intimidating as an 18-hole course. I mean, when you're playing 23 to 2,800 yards compared to 56 to 68, like, it's a lot less intimidating. 300-yard par fours are much more enjoyable to play when you're learning how to play golf and you can only hit it 180 yards.
Yeah, I mean, it's great for the whole family. I mean, it's like you can bring the whole family out. It's not intimidating. It's not expensive, which, golf's getting pretty expensive.
Yeah.
And we're running out of real estate.
We are. So let's cherish these 9-holers so they don't disappear.
Yeah.
Well, Matty, thank you, my man, for coming on. I appreciate it. I mean, we took a whole hour here, but it's always a pleasure to have you on. Let's get out soon. One of the next couple weekends, I'm gonna jet out there, and we're gonna get around in at Gerhardt. So then we'll go. We'll have to go to the Wall and have a couple meals.
Yep, we'll go to the Wall, the unofficial clubhouse of Gerhardt, and throw down a couple G&Ts. But it's been great talking with you once again. Thank you.
Anytime, my man. Take care.
All right, see ya.